For me, when I think of timeless design, one of the first kind of interiors that I think about is those really layered and personal looks. I love the idea that interiors can be kind of imperfect and an evolution over time, but often if that's the case, it's quite hard to know where you would start.
You could start with the actual architecture of the space, you could start with perhaps a really impressive bay window that you have maybe, or you can start with something that you personally really love, like a sort of an heirloom or a picture that perhaps you've collected or you've been given over time, and that can then act as a springboard for you to create the rest of the scheme. Is there anything that you've kind of incorporated into your space that is of a similar ilk?
I used to work as a picture framer, so it was quite tempting to buy quite a lot of artwork.
Yeah, I bet.
And one of my favourite pieces is by this artist called Eddy Soper, and she illustrated a lot of Enid Blyton's books. Probably heard of the Famous Five.
Yeah, I loved the Famous
So when
Five.
I saw this piece of artwork, I just knew I had to have it.
Yeah.
It went straight up on the wall. It was one of the first things, and I was like, that is the starting point.
Yeah, and it's immediately your home, right?
Yeah,
as soon
exactly.
as the things on the wall reflect you.
It's amazing how quickly that can transform
Totally.
the space, just to put things like that on the wall.
I've got a picture that was painted by my husband's grandfather, which is just a really pretty landscape and is full of colour and full of pattern, and it's a really great way to build a scheme from there. It's got a lovely wooden frame, so trying to keep it earthy, trying to keep it layered and interesting, but whilst also being a bit fun.
What I love about these is you're not trying to like perfectly match it, but just having like similar tones, it works really well.
If you're searching for patterns, I think one of the things you should do is do a bit of a deep dive into the fabric houses and get a feel for what you are personally really drawn to. What's important is that it makes you feel something when you look at it. But what's also particularly important is that there's a bit of dimension to it. So this is not just two colours on a page, you know, it's, if you stand back, that's just a green and cream paper, but actually it's very textured and it's got lots of different colours.
If you were using a pattern like this, where would you use it in a scheme?
Well, I would be quite bold with it. I would put it everywhere I could, probably all over the walls, and I might even go on the ceiling, but I know that you maybe wouldn't. So where would you put it if you were using something like this?
I'm not so brave with wallpapers as much as I like to think that I am. But if it was me, you could perhaps use it on the back of your wardrobe or your closet. You could even use it on some of the panelling in a standalone piece of furniture like this, just like gentle nods to that pattern.
And would you go pattern on pattern, or would you then stick with that and that be your kind of primary pattern?
I think I would go pattern on pattern. I would probably not be getting everything at once. I would like to be taking things from different places, different shops I've been to, and just layering it over time, I think. And I think sometimes when you have too much of the same thing in one space, it feels more perfectly curated than if you were kind of to do that over time. What about you?
I think it's really important in your home that you accrue these things over time, and therefore they aren't going to be all of the same pattern, and you might pick up a stool that you saw at a sort of a flea market that's got a stripe on it, and I think that creates a much more inviting sense of space.
Where are some of the places that you like to kind of collect your items from?
I love the antiques fairs,
Yeah.
getting, you know, some of the more interesting pieces, the one-offs. I think that's the key, is finding stuff that you really love and that isn't what you've seen all over the internet necessarily. And then also when you're on holiday or when you're anywhere that's felt like a significant moment, is picking something up that you can then transfer and bring home, and then you have a kind of house of memories as well as just pretty things.
Yeah, it's like your own story. It's
Exactly.
super personal. You can also take items and upcycle them. You can paint them. You can do some really interesting effects with things these days.
Get little bits of trim too, just to add, you know, let's say it's a reasonably plain piece. You just need a little bit more trim, add it into these areas, and then you've got a completely new piece of furniture. Yeah. We could talk about that for ages. So when it comes to including some more of the raw and natural materials in your home, what is really important to you when you're thinking about things like that?
I think it's super important to be including raw and natural materials like stone, wood, wool, clay, just things that have a bit of character, a bit of age. As human beings, we just have this like innate longing to be close to nature, and I think bringing those things into your space, it has a real like grounding effect. It's really calming, it's soothing, and I think ultimately that's really good for your mental well-being.
Particularly when you've got a kind of more traditional property, using reclaimed materials, using things like the linens, the sort of softer textures. I love including things like that because I think it really gives a sense of kind of, it's almost a bit of history.
Yes,
kind of making sure that you don't erase that from a building. You know, it's always quite heartbreaking when you see people ripping out those original floors or anything with lots of kind of patina and interest to it. It's character, isn't it? And it's actually one of the reasons we buy old houses in this country, particularly because they do have that character to them.
You've just bought a house. Have you discovered anything unexpected?
Well, we were hoping for some beautiful reclaimed floor beneath the first layer of laminate, but we've just uncovered the second layer of laminate, so that's been quite disappointing. But I'll keep digging and we'll see whether we find something nice and original. Who knows? So
for you, it's about kind of trying to bring that character back into the space. What are some of the ways that you might do that? Well,
what's pretty common, and particularly ours is a Victorian house, is that in the noughties that was all ripped out because it was seen as uncool. So we're trying to reintroduce particularly a lot of cornice, getting the fireplace right, for example, adding in some of the brick detailing, bringing back in the flooring, and then styling is also really important. So what would be kind of important to you when it comes to styling the space?
In a scheme like this where you've got shelves, particularly you've got quite a lot of space to play with, and that can be quite daunting. I think in a scheme like this, using a mix of antique, contemporary pieces just brings like a real coziness to the space, and it ties it all in. You could have a mixture of different reflectiveness, like glass.
Help bounce the light around. And also the negative space is really important. Not just cramming it full of your belongings, but, you know, being more intentional about what goes where.
That's a really good point, actually. Sometimes when you go into these houses where they're beautifully styled and you think, oh my goodness, where have they hidden everything? Like, storage is super important.
Storage,
Thinking everything in your house, do I want that to be there? Do I need it? Do I have to buy it?
Being really choosy when you buy things.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you get a lovely put together space.
So I've noticed in your designs that you like to use nature-inspired prints quite a lot. Why is that?
I do. I use them an awful lot, actually. And I think one of the reasons is that it feels very natural to us as humans to bring the outside in, and therefore bringing pieces or fabrics and wallpapers and prints that have literally nature on them helps us to feel very at home. And it's also a great way to add colour and texture. I use a lot of William Morris and the Morris & Co. Kind of archival pieces because they're a little bit of history, but also they're packed with different kind of forms and different colours.
My parents had willow boughs on their sofa growing up, so whenever I think of William Morris, I think of the sofa, and so it's quite nostalgic. And I think actually some of these more vintage looking wallpapers, they do kind of trigger that nostalgia.
I find it quite easy to work with as well. It's a great basis point to pull from and to pull colour from, and those colours are generally reflected well in nature. So when we're looking out of the window, it also makes sense for it to sort of apply in reverse when we're designing a room and making a home feel homely.
Throughout history as well, like not just now, people have brought in floral motifs through like tapestries, wall art, wallpapers.
And even on some of the architectural details, some of the cornice details, so you often have those kind of floral motifs around a fireplace. It might be in the tiles, but it's, again, all echoing each other and all sort of working with these generally muddier tones. And they feel a lot more natural than those really kind of vibrant, jewel-toned colours, and to me that's a more comfortable space to be in, and it seems to be for lots of my clients as well.
I think even actually both of these patterns together in a way can work, particularly if you're pairing them with something that's a bit more plain, if you were introducing them as like an accent.
Maybe that's a footstool or a blind and that's your wallpaper. Obviously that is a paper, but you can get that in the fabric form, and we've even got a sheer here, which is also willow boughs, but it's a nice way to echo the print through without having anything hugely overwhelming in the space, but it's just a little bit more interesting.
For me, it's important to have nature in your home. One of the things that I love so much about it is that nature is fleeting. And when you see it echoed in a print or piece of artwork, it's like you've captured it in that moment in time before it's changed with the seasons.
Totally.
And there's something like really, really magical about that.
Would you be more tempted to kind of lean towards one season versus another?
To be honest, I probably lean slightly more towards spring and May time. Like that is my favourite time of year. Anyway.
Everything is coming back to life. It's quite joyful and happy, and that's quite nice in the home, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's really beautiful, and I really love gardening, and that's something that I want to do more of. Bring more flowers inside as well, because it's not just having it in things like your wallpaper, your artwork. It can be as like literal as going outside and bringing flowers in.
And you could create yourself a small cutting kind of bed, and then you'll get that seasonal change in your home just through bringing in the flowers or the plants, whatever's going on.
No, that's super lovely.
So when you're looking at your new house and you're thinking about how you're furnishing the rooms, how you're kind of creating the schemes, are you kind of influenced by trends? Are you aware of them? How much weight are you giving them when you're thinking about the spaces? I
try not to give too much weight to trends. I try more to think of the rooms as like a blank canvas with more of a kind of neutral base to them, where you can slowly start adding things back into the space. I know that in 2026, people are looking at more playful, small patterns. Somewhere you could incorporate that might be in the soft furnishings, or as you would love, on the ceiling.
It's so easy these days to be kind of shown every trend under the sun. And actually, I think what's really important is to as hard as it is, to try and keep your kind of core principles really strong. For me, it might be sticking to, I mean, I'm always going to do more colour and pattern, but it might be sticking to colours that have seen the light of day for years and years. You know, these jewel tones have been very popular for a long time, so I don't think it's a trend as such. And then allowing the trends to come in through some of the accessories and maybe bits of lighting that are movable. But then when you come to your kind of things like your flooring and your core electrics, is staying really timeless, because we're hopefully not going to be changing those very often. So they need to really work hard for a long time, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And then you can play from there.
Another forecasted trend that we're seeing for 2026 is more use of burgundy. You can see it here, little pops in the wallpaper.
I actually love this one because I think burgundy is a really fantastic colour that spans kind of the test of time. I think it's such a lovely, rich colour that has so much heritage to it, that actually if you wanted to sprinkle a bit of a trend into your home, but with the kind of comfort that it'll probably stick around for a while, you can just add in bits like a bit of trim. So maybe this is your blind fabric, and then you pop this tape detail down the side, and it's just a nod, it's just a straight bit of colour. You're not trying to be too clever with it, but it's enough to just bring that into your home in a neat, kind of timeless way.
So I think personally as well, if I kind of put it all over the walls, I would find that quite
and it's a big commitment as well. Whereas this is a nod, isn't it? And it's then still keeping those really kind of core principles the same, whilst adding in a little bit around the edges.
Leading on from that is, not only should you think about what you like and what trends you want to incorporate in the room, but also like, what is that room saying to you? Like, you might have something that you're dying to do in that room,
and it just feels
and it just
wrong.
doesn't work. I think it's really important.
And it might be that it's the architecture, it might be that some of these details just don't allow for it, or maybe you live in a new build and therefore having loads of heritage prints again feels a bit jarring. And so you've got to kind of roll with what's natural, and then you can add in little bits here and there to help it feel kind of the moment, but whilst ensuring that you're going to love it at least for the next decade.
And you can kind of treat it like a work in progress, and there's no harm in putting samples up in different places and kind of seeing how you absorb that when it's there.
And what you're most drawn to naturally, because ultimately that's the right thing you should buy, is what, you know, each time you walk into that room, where does your eye go? Of those three options, buy that one.